In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the simpler built-in functions in Excel. Excel has hundreds of functions built in, and we're only going to look at a handful in all of these videos. But we're going to look at some of the basic ones right now. So let's take a look at this sample spreadsheet here. We've got a simple budget, and what I want to do is I want to add up the numbers that are in this column. Now, with only 3 numbers in the cell, it'd be pretty easy for me just to type equals B2. Plus B3 plus B4, and I've got my answer. But if you've got, dozens or even hundreds of numbers in a column and you want to add them all up, you really don't want to type in a formula like that. So what we're going to do instead is we are going to use one of the built-in functions. Most of the functions are on the Formulas tab here. We've got this function library, and they're all divided up into categories. But there's a handful of functions that are available on the Home tab. And they are all over here, and I'm not sure why it's in the editing group, but they're in the editing group. And these are here because these are ones that just are very handy, and they're used a lot in Excel. And the first one is called Sum. We've also got one for the average, one to count the numbers in a range of cells, one to find the maximum number in a range of cells, and one to find the minimum number in a range of cells. And we're just going to start off with Sum. So I'm going to start off where I want the sum to go, click on B5. And then go over here and just click on the Autosum button. I could also click on the down arrow and then click on the sum, but it's easier just to click on Autosum. And whenever you click on the sum button at the bottom of a column of numbers, it assumes that you want to add the numbers in that column. So it finds all the numbers that are here, and it puts them as arguments to the sum function. So it's a formula, so it starts with an equal sign. Then the name of the function is sum. And then you always have to pass in what's called an argument list to the function, so it knows what it is, in this case, supposed to sum. And this is called a range, and it's a handy way of denoting a whole bunch of cells at one time. You give the top left one, you give the bottom right one. Now, in this case, they're all in the same column, so top left and bottom right are in the same column. But I could have said, sum everything from here over to here. And let's undo that. And let's go do an Autosum. And if I do it the way that I was selecting it a minute ago, B2 would be the first number, first cell reference, and D4 would be the second one. There'd be a colon in between, and it would select all 9 of those cells. Well, it has selected correctly for me here, so I don't really need to do anything. If I didn't want to change it, I could just take the mouse and drag it. Now see how it says B2 to B3, but actually I want B2 to B4. So when you've got the correct selection in there, you can either type it in, type B2 colon B4, but the easiest way is just to drag the mouse over the numbers that you want to sum. And then hit enter when you're done. And it tells us if we add those numbers up, we get the number 1030. Now I also want to do the same thing at the bottom of this column and the same thing at the bottom of this column. And I could just go here, and click on Autosum and hit enter. And I could go here and click on Autosum and hit enter. And that doesn't actually take a whole lot of work, but we're going to do it a different way. I'm going to delete these 2 cells here. And before I actually put anything in those cells, I want to take another look at this formula right here. If I click on it once, the formula appears up here on the formula bar. If I double click on it, the formula appears in the cell, which is probably the way most people prefer to edit the formula. And so it shows me the formula, and it says sum from B2 to B4. But the way that's actually stored by Excel is it's not stored as B2 and B4. It's stored as the location relative to where the formula is. So B2 is 1, 2, 3 cells above. B4 is 1 cell above. And so what we're saying is add everything from from 3 cells above to 1 cell above, including both numbers. And so that's the way it's interpreted. And actually that works out kind of nice, because if I click on this cell, and now I'm going to do a Control-C on the keyboard to copy that. And as soon as I do, you see the dancing line. And then I'm just going to pick a random spot over here, and I'm going to do Control-V to paste it in. Okay. Now I get the number 0. But if you look up here, it doesn't say sum from B2 to B4. It says sum from G2 to G7. If I double click on this, the blue box will appear showing me the argument list, and it is G7 to G9. But we really don't care about the G7 and G9. It is the 3 cells that are above the cell that we are currently in. Okay. Now I can't do another paste again because Excel clears the clipboard all the time on you, so I'm going to have to go back here and do another Control-C, got my dancing line again. I'm going to pick another place here and do a Control V. And if I double click on it, again, it is the 3 cells above where I pasted the formula to. So those are called relative cell references. That's the default in Excel. Probably about 75% of the time when you're doing Excel formulas, that's what you need. Okay, now, because cell references are relative by default, if I take this formula and copy it to the right once, and double click there, see now it's column C from 2 to 4. And if I take this one and copy it all the way across to here now and double click on it, it's column D, D2 to D4. Okay, so when I copy a formula that has relative cell references in it, the references remain relative. So if I'm summing numbers at the bottom of column B and I copy it to the right, it'll sum the numbers at the bottom of column C. If I copy that to the right, it'll sum the numbers in column D, and so on. So you really only need to do the formula once, then you get your fill handle and copy it across. But there is yet another way to do it. And I'm going to delete the formulas at the bottom of those columns. And I'm going to leave all of this selected. And then I'm just going to click on my Autosum button over here. And it assumes that I want a sum at the bottom of every single column. And it puts those formulas in. If you want to make sure that Excel really did the right thing, just go here and double click and make sure that it is highlighting in blue the 3 numbers that you want to sum. Now we can also do the same thing over here on the right side. And the same trick works as well. If I just want to do it once, I can select all of 4 cells, click on Autosum, and if I do that at the right of a row of numbers, it assumes I want to add up the row. It's always a good idea not to assume that Excel is doing the right thing, but to double check on it. And it says B2 to D2, here's B2, here's D2, and it also draws a blue box around it, so it's doing exactly what I want it to do. If I double click on this one, same thing, double click, and it's working correctly. Now there are some other formulas up here other than the sum formula, and one of those is called the max function. And so let's say I want to know what the maximum budget amount was that I had for each one of these 3 categories. So for food it would be this one, for these it would be any one because they're all the same, and for this one it would be the 280. Okay, so I want Excel to tell me what the highest number was in each one of my budget categories. So let's go to highest here. Let's go click on the down arrow and let's type in max, short for maximum. And Excel makes a mistake now. It's not really a mistake. That's what Excel is supposed to do when you do one of these statistical functions at the right side of a row of numbers. But logically, it is a mistake. I do not want to include the total there. Otherwise, the total would always be the number that appears here in the column. I just want these 3. So just take your mouse, click and drag, and select from B2 to D2 with that white plus sign. And when it says B2 to D2 over here, you're good to go. Go ahead and hit the Enter key. And now if I double click on it, you'll see it is highlighting in blue the numbers that I want to look at. And if I go here and copy this down, and let's just double click quickly. This one doesn't really matter which one it is. This one should be 280 right there. This one should be the 1040 in column D. Okay. There's also a min function. Which basically does the same thing, except it finds the smallest number instead of the largest. So let's choose min. And now we've got yet an extra number here, and we just want the first 3, January through March. So drag your mouse over B2 to D2, and when those 3 are selected with a dancing line around them, go ahead and hit the Enter key, and it should tell me my lowest amount for food was $260 in March. And then I'm going to get my fill handle here, and I'm going to click and drag all the way down, and it gives me the minimum value. Okay, now I've got those selected. I'm going to hit the delete key, and it's pretty easy, just to go here and click on the name of the function that you want. But you can also, after you've done this a while, and it doesn't take very long before you figure out how to do this, you can type in the name of the function. And Excel doesn't care if you put uppercase or lowercase. And then you put the range in there, which is B2 colon D2, close parentheses, and hit Enter. And you get the exact same thing. So you can do it whichever way you think is easiest. But either way should work just fine. We got an average function over here. I want to know what the average amount was in each one of my categories. we go up to our Autosum button, click on the More button down here, and click on Average. And now it's trying to average all of those numbers, and I don't want that, so just select from B2 to D2 again. Hit Enter. Get your fill handle and drag that down. And then let's go to our count column. In our count column, we want to count. Now what count does, if you go over here and look, it says it counts the numbers. How many cells have numbers in them, okay? Well, if we're doing a budget, every one of these should have a number in it. So let's go and choose count. It says count numbers there, but the actual name of the function is count. And I only want to count those numbers, and I should get 3 of them. And hit Enter. And the count function is probably the least useful of the 4 that we've looked at. The main value of it, at least in this case, is to find out if you get any missing numbers. So if we find a number other than 3 there, then it should tell us that we have a number missing someplace, and we might want to go back to our spreadsheet and take another look. And the only other thing I think we want to do here is probably take these numbers right here, and because everything else is a whole number, let's go back to our Home tab, and let's go to our comma, and decrease the decimals twice. Okay. And again, we got a little problem here with rounding off. This rounds up to 282. This rounds up to 242. 2 plus 2 is not 3, it's 4. But the underlying number behind all of these is the correct number. If I do a comma here, you'll see that's basically 2/3. This is basically 2/3, and this should be 1/3. So if we increase the number of decimal places, we see this number is basically 281 2/3, which rounds to 282. This is 241 2/3, which rounds to 242. And this one is 1023 1/3, which rounds to 1023. So if I go back now and decrease my decimals again, okay, it looks like it's off, but it's really not.